The clatter of silverware against porcelain plates formed a hollow symphony around me, each note reminding me how alone I was in this crowded space. Luciano's was the kind of Italian restaurant where the lighting remained perpetually dim, where crystal glasses caught amber reflections from candles, and where I didn't belong. Not anymore. My hands trembled as I smoothed down the black pencil skirt that had once fit perfectly, but now hung loose around my hips. 6 weeks of barely eating will do that to you. 6 weeks of looking over my shoulder, of jumping at shadows, of sleeping with a knife under my pillow. More water, miss? I flinched as the waiter materialized beside me, pitcher poised above my barely touched glass. His name tag read Eric, and his smile seemed genuine, but I'd learned not to trust friendly faces. Yes, please, I whispered, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. My gaze drifted across the restaurant as Eric filled my glass. That's when I saw him. He sat 3 tables away, partially obscured by an ornate column, but unmistakable even in profile. Dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on ancient Roman currency, all sharp angles and cold perfection. His suit was charcoal gray, impeccably tailored to broad shoulders. No tie. The top 2 buttons of his crisp white shirt remained casually undone, revealing a slice of olive skin. Alexander Castellano, the man whose name was whispered in fear throughout the city. I quickly looked down at my barely touched risotto, heart hammering against my ribs. What was he doing here? This wasn't his territory. The East Side belonged to the Moretti family. Or at least, that's what Jack had told me. Jack, the thought of him sent a fresh wave of nausea rolling through me. My fiancé. No. My ex-fiancé, who had disappeared 3 days ago after emptying our joint account and leaving me with nothing but his debts and his enemies. Is everything all right with your meal? Eric returned, concern etched between his brows. It's perfect, I lied, forcing myself to take a bite. The creamy rice felt like sandpaper against my dry throat. Through my peripheral vision, I noticed a subtle shift in the restaurant's energy. 2 broad-shouldered men in black suits had positioned themselves near the entrance. Another stood by the kitchen doors, all with the same military posture, the same vigilant eyes that periodically returned to Castellano's table. His security detail, of course. The waiter nodded and moved away, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the mounting pressure in my chest. I couldn't afford this meal. I couldn't afford anything anymore. The last of my cash had gone to the motel room where I'd been hiding, and that ran out tomorrow. The credit card I'd used tonight was already maxed out, but I was desperate and hungry and tired of being afraid. I needed help. But who would help the woman stupid enough to fall in love with a con man who had stolen from the mob? My eyes burned as I stared down at the check Eric had discreetly placed at the edge of my table. $76. $42 for a meal I couldn't taste, and wine I couldn't drink because I needed to stay alert. Always alert. A wild, desperate idea sparked in my mind. Before I could reconsider, I pulled a pen from my purse and flipped over the check. In shaky capital letters, I wrote 2 words: "Save me." I didn't know what I expected. Maybe the waiter would see it and call the police. Maybe he'd offer to let me wash dishes to pay for my meal. Maybe he'd just throw me out. Anything would be better than going back to that motel to wait for Jack's creditors to find me. As I stared at those 2 desperate words, a shadow fell across my table. "Is this seat taken?" The voice was deep and smooth, with the barest hint of an Italian accent. I didn't need to look up to know who it belonged to. My breath caught in my throat as Alexander Castellano pulled out the chair opposite mine and sat down without waiting for an answer. Up close, his eyes were darker than I'd imagined, almost black in the dim light, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "I believe we have a mutual acquaintance," he said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. His presence seemed to consume all the oxygen around us. With elegant fingers, he turned over the check I had forgotten to hide, studying my desperate plea. A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Jack Romano," he continued, his voice hardening around the name. "You're his fiancé, yes? Ex," I managed to whisper. "Ex-fiancé." Something flashed in those dark eyes. Interest, perhaps, or calculation. One of his security men approached, leaning down to whisper something in Castellano's ear. He nodded almost imperceptibly, eyes never leaving my face. "What's your name?" he asked after the man retreated. Emma, I answered, my voice small. Emma Mitchell. Well, Emma Mitchell, he said, my name rolling off his tongue like he was tasting it. It seems you have quite a problem. He reached for the check, his fingertips brushing against mine. I jerked my hand away, the brief contact sending an electric current up my arm. Please, I whispered, hating the desperation in my voice. I don't want any trouble. I didn't know what Jack was doing. I didn't know he was stealing from... I cut myself off, afraid to say too much. Castellano's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And yet here you are, having dinner in my favorite restaurant, coincidentally on the same night I'm here. My blood turned to ice. Your restaurant? But this is... Moretti territory? He chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. Not anymore. The implication hung in the air between us. Whatever power struggle had been brewing in the city's underworld had apparently been resolved, and not in the Moretti's favor. I had nowhere else to go, I admitted, the truth spilling out before I could stop it. He took everything. The apartment, our savings. I have nothing left. His dark gaze traveled over my face, assessing, calculating. I felt stripped bare under that stare. Nothing. He repeated softly. The way he said it made me acutely aware of how I must look to him, vulnerable, desperate, cornered. A woman with nothing left to lose, or perhaps everything left to lose. Your bill has been taken care of, he said abruptly, rising to his feet. He towered over me, blocking out the soft lighting. My driver will take you somewhere safe. It wasn't a request. I can't accept that, I stammered, panic rising in my throat. I'd heard stories about Castellano's generosity, how it always came with strings attached, strings that bound you to him permanently. His smile was cold. You asked for salvation, Emma. I'm offering it. But the alternative, he cut in smoothly, is that I leave you to whatever fate awaits when Jack's other creditors find you. And they will find you. Tonight, most likely. The blood drained from my face. How do you know? That they're looking for you. He leaned down, his cologne, something woodsy and expensive, enveloping me. Because I own Jack's debt now. All of it. Every last favor, every last dollar. And do you know what that means, Emma? I shook my head mutely. It means I own you too. The restaurant seemed to fade away, the ambient noise receding until all I could hear was the pounding of my own heart. This was worse than I'd imagined. So much worse. You have 30 seconds to decide, he said, checking his watch. A sleek, understated timepiece that probably cost more than I'd made in a year. Come with me willingly, or I'll have my men escort you out. Either way, you're coming. I glanced desperately around the restaurant. No one was looking our way. No one would help me. And even if they wanted to, who would stand against Alexander Castellano? Time's up, he said softly. I stood on shaky legs, clutching my purse to my chest like a shield. I'll come with you. Something dark and satisfied flashed across his face. He placed his hand at the small of my back, his touch light but unmistakably possessive as he guided me between the tables. Smart girl, he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. The cool night air hit my flushed cheeks as we stepped outside. A sleek black Bentley idled at the curb, a mountain of a man holding the rear door open. Castellano's hand remained firm against my back, steering me toward the car. As I slid into the leather seat, I caught his reflection in the window glass. For a brief moment, his mask slipped, and what I saw in his eyes made my blood run cold. It wasn't just power or control I saw there. It was possession. I had written "Save me" on a check, and instead of salvation, I had caught the attention of the devil himself. And as the car pulled away from the curb, I realized with absolute certainty that Alexander Castellano had no intention of ever letting me go. The Bentley glided through the city streets like a shark through dark water. I sat rigid against the butter-soft leather, acutely aware of Alexander Castellano beside me, his presence filling the spacious back seat until I could barely breathe. He hadn't spoken since we left the restaurant. His attention focused on the sleek phone in his hand, fingers moving rapidly across the screen. Through the tinted windows, I watched familiar neighborhoods blur past, then unfamiliar ones, until the glittering high-rises of downtown gave way to the exclusive waterfront district, where penthouses sold for 8 figures, and privacy was the ultimate luxury. "Where are you taking me?" I finally asked, my voice sounding small in the hushed interior. Castellano slipped his phone into his jacket pocket and turned those obsidian eyes on me. "Somewhere safe." Safe for whom? A hint of a smile touched his lips. "Careful, Emma." That almost sounded like defiance. I swallowed hard and looked away, focusing on the heavy gold signet ring on his right hand. A lion's head was engraved into the flat surface, its tiny ruby eyes catching the intermittent glow of streetlights. "You're afraid," he observed. Not a question. Shouldn't I be? His gaze traveled over my face, lingering on my lips before returning to my eyes. "Fear is a natural response to power you don't understand. It doesn't have to stay that way." The car slowed, turning into the underground parking garage of the Archer, the newest and most exclusive residential building in the city. I'd read about it in a magazine. 60 floors of luxury, a waiting list years long, and security tighter than most government buildings. "You live here?" I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. "One of many residences," he replied dismissively as the car stopped beside a private elevator. "I prefer not to be predictable." The driver opened Castellano's door, then mine. As I stepped out, I noticed 3 other vehicles had escorted us. Black SUVs with tinted windows, from which more suited men emerged, creating a protective perimeter around us. My chest tightened. Even if I wanted to run, where would I go? How far would I get? The elevator required both a keycard and fingerprint scan. As we ascended, Castellano stood close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell that intoxicating cologne that seemed infused with his skin. "Why am I here?" I whispered, watching the floor numbers climb rapidly. "Because Jack Romano stole something that belongs to me," he answered, his voice hardening. "And I always recover what's mine." "I told you, I didn't know about—" "Not money, Emma." His eyes found mine in the mirrored wall of the elevator. "Information. Access codes to certain sensitive accounts, and you're going to help me get them back." The elevator doors opened directly into a vast penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a breathtaking panorama of the city skyline and the dark expanse of the ocean beyond. Everything was sleek, modern, masculine. Charcoal gray sofas, glass tables, abstract art in muted colors. "How could I possibly help you?" I asked, rooted to the spot as he moved past me, shrugging off his jacket and draping it over a nearby chair. "I told you. Jack took everything and disappeared. I haven't seen or heard from him in days." Castellano loosened his cuffs, rolling up his sleeves with methodical precision to reveal corded forearms dusted with dark hair. The domesticity of the gesture felt strangely intimate. "He'll contact you," he said with absolute certainty. Men like Jack, they always circle back to what they perceive as easy prey. The casual cruelty of his assessment stung, even though I knew it was probably true. I'd been Jack's safety net, his adoring audience, his willing fool for 2 years. And what happens when, if, he does contact me? "You'll tell him exactly what I instruct you to tell him." Castellano moved to a bar cart in the corner, pouring amber liquid into 2 crystal tumblers. "You'll convince him to meet you, and then you'll bring him to me." He offered me one of the glasses. When I made no move to take it, he set it on the glass coffee table with a soft clink. "I won't help you kill him," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "You assume you have a choice. There's always a choice. Is there?" He took a step closer. "Let me clarify your situation, Emma Mitchell. Right now, Jack's former associates, the ones whose territory I've recently acquired, believe you were complicit in his theft. They're looking for you with rather unpleasant intentions." My stomach dropped. "I had nothing to do with it. I know that," he said, surprising me. "If you had, you wouldn't have written that pathetic plea for help. You wouldn't be wearing a watch 3 years out of fashion or shoes that have been resoled twice." His gaze was clinical, assessing. "You're many things, but you're not a thief." I didn't know whether to be relieved or offended. "Then why?" "Because Jack will believe you'll help him," he cut in smoothly. "Because despite everything, There's still a part of you that loves him, isn't there? That's what he'll be counting on when he reaches out. The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. Even after everything Jack had done, even knowing he'd used me, lied to me, stolen from me, there was still a traitorous part of my heart that remembered how it felt when he smiled at me, when he held me, when he promised me forever. "Your silence is answer enough," Castellano said softly. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the comfortable temperature of the penthouse. "What if I refuse to help you?" He considered me for a long moment, then sighed as if disappointed. "Then I withdraw my protection. You leave here tonight, and whatever happens after that is no longer my concern." "You'd just let me go?" I asked, disbelief evident in my voice. His smile was chilling. "I never force anyone to accept my help, Emma. I merely offer choices and consequences." The weight of his words settled over me like chains. Stay and betray Jack, or leave and face whatever, whoever, awaited me out there alone. "I need to think," I whispered. "Of course. Take all the time you need." He gestured toward the sweeping view. "The city looks different from up here, doesn't it? Less chaotic, more controllable." He moved closer, until we stood side by side before the vast windows. Below us, the city twinkled like fallen stars, beautiful and distant. "That's the thing about perspective, Emma. From down there," he pointed toward the streets far below, "I might seem like a monster, but from up here—" He turned to face me, so close now that I could see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. "From up here, I'm the one who keeps the real monsters at bay." Something in his voice made me look up, meeting his gaze. For a fleeting moment, I glimpsed something unexpected behind the cold calculation in his eyes. A flash of genuine emotion, quickly masked. "There's a guest room prepared for you," he said, his tone businesslike once more. "You'll find everything you need, clothes, toiletries." "I took the liberty of having your things collected from that motel." A chill ran through me. "How did you know where I was staying?" "I make it my business to know things, Emma. Especially about people who interest me." The way he said interest made heat creep up my neck. I took a step back, needing distance from his overwhelming presence. "Why would I interest you? I'm nobody." His expression darkened. "You undervalue yourself. That's Jack's influence, I suspect." Before I could respond, the elevator doors opened, and one of his security men stepped out, holding a small overnight bag, my overnight bag from the motel. "Your belongings, sir," the man said, his gaze carefully averted from mine. Castellano nodded a dismissal, taking the bag himself rather than having it brought to the guest room. An oddly personal gesture that caught me off guard. "Thank you," I said automatically when he handed it to me, our fingers brushing briefly. He studied me with those penetrating eyes. "You have good manners. That's rare these days." "My mother believed in raising a proper Southern girl," I replied, the mention of home bringing a sudden, acute wave of homesickness. Charleston seemed a lifetime away now, though it had only been 3 years since I'd left for what I thought would be an adventure in the big city. "And yet here you are," he observed, "a very long way from home." I clutched my bag tighter. "We all make mistakes, some more costly than others." He gestured toward a hallway to the right. "Second door on the left. The room has its own bathroom. You'll find the kitchen fully stocked if you're hungry." The sudden shift to practicalities was disorienting. One moment he was threatening me, the next offering me food like a considerate host. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. He tilted his head slightly, considering. "Let's just say I have a particular interest in seeing Jack Romano pay for his indiscretions." "It can't just be about money," I pressed, emboldened by exhaustion and the surreal nature of the situation. Something dangerous flickered across his face. "You're right. It's not." He stepped closer, closing the distance between us until I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingertips lingering against my cheek. "Jack took something that wasn't his," he said, his voice a low growl that sent involuntary shivers down my spine. "He should have known better than to touch what belongs to me." I stood frozen, barely breathing, as his thumb traced the curve of my lower lip. "Rest, Emma," he said, dropping his hand. "Tomorrow we begin." "Begin what?" I wanted to ask, but the words died in my throat as he turned and walked away, disappearing down another hallway without a backward glance. Left alone in the vast living room, I felt smaller and more vulnerable than ever. The city sprawled beneath me, a glittering cage I couldn't escape. Somewhere out there, Jack was hiding. Somewhere out there, people wanted me dead. And here I was, in the lion's den, with no choice but to trust the most dangerous predator of all. I found the guest room exactly where Castellano had indicated. Like the rest of the penthouse, it was elegant and impersonal. A king-sized bed with charcoal gray bedding, minimalist furniture, another stunning view of the city. The adjoining bathroom was bigger than my entire studio apartment had been, with a rainfall shower and deep soaking tub. On the bed lay a silk nightgown I definitely didn't own, tags still attached. La Perla. I didn't need to check the price to know it cost more than my monthly rent. The implications made my cheeks burn. Did he expect me to? No. This was just another power play, another way to remind me who was in control. I left the nightgown where it lay, choosing instead to sleep in my own t-shirt and shorts after a long, hot shower that failed to wash away the feeling of being watched, assessed, owned. As I slid between the cool sheets, exhaustion crashed over me in waves. I hadn't slept properly in days, jumping at every sound in that dingy motel room, terrified of every shadow. Despite everything, despite the danger, despite the uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring, I felt my eyelids growing heavy. The last thing I saw before sleep claimed me was the city beyond the windows, a sea of lights that seemed to whisper secrets in the darkness, and somewhere in that darkness, Alexander Castellano was waiting, planning, watching. I had asked to be saved. I wasn't yet sure if I'd been rescued or captured. I woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, and the disorienting sensation of unfamiliar luxury. For a moment, I couldn't remember where I was. The sheets were too soft, the silence too complete, the mattress too comfortable. Then it all came rushing back. The restaurant, the desperate plea. Alexander Castellano. A quick glance at the bedside clock showed it was nearly 10 in the morning. I'd slept for almost 12 hours. My body had finally surrendered to exhaustion, despite the precariousness of my situation. The events of the previous night felt almost dreamlike in the harsh light of day, but the unfamiliar surroundings confirmed the reality. I wasn't dreaming. I was in Alexander Castellano's penthouse, caught in a web of his making. A soft knock at the door made me start. "Miss Mitchell?" A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "Mr. Castellano asked me to check if you need anything. Breakfast is ready whenever you are." I pulled the sheets higher, suddenly conscious of my worn sleep clothes. "I'll be out in a few minutes, thank you." Footsteps retreated down the hallway. I exhaled slowly, trying to gather my thoughts. Apparently, Castellano had staff. Of course he would. I wondered how many people moved through this space, invisible until needed, like the woman at the door. My overnight bag yielded little in the way of appropriate clothing. Everything I owned now fit into that small bag. A few changes of clothes, basic toiletries, and the framed photo of my parents that I hadn't been able to leave behind when I fled the apartment. I settled on jeans and a simple blouse, both slightly wrinkled from being hastily packed. After brushing my teeth and attempting to tame my sleep-tousled hair, I steeled myself to face whatever awaited beyond the bedroom door. The penthouse was even more impressive by daylight. Sunlight bounced off glass and steel surfaces, highlighting artwork I hadn't noticed the night before. Abstract paintings and sculptures that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. I followed the scent of coffee to the kitchen. A gleaming expanse of marble and high-end appliances. A slender woman in her 50s stood at the counter, arranging fruit on a platter. She looked up as I entered, her expression carefully neutral. "Good morning, Miss Mitchell. I'm Mrs. Winters, Mr. Castellano's housekeeper." Her voice matched the one at my door earlier. "What would you like for breakfast? I can prepare eggs, pancakes, or perhaps an omelet." "Just coffee, please," I said, uncomfortable with being waited on. "Black is fine." She poured coffee from a carafe into a delicate porcelain cup. "Mr. Castellano insists his guests eat properly. Perhaps some fruit and toast to start? The way she said guests made me wonder how many women had stood in this kitchen before me, disoriented and out of place in Alexander Castellanos' world. That would be fine. Thank you. Mrs. Winters worked with quiet efficiency, setting a place for me at the kitchen island. The normalcy of the situation, breakfast being prepared, coffee served, felt surreal against the backdrop of last night's threats and revelations. "Where is Mr. Castellano?" I asked, trying to sound casual as I slid onto a stool at the island. "He had early business to attend to," she replied, placing a plate of artfully arranged fruit before me. "He asked me to tell you he'll return by noon and expects you to be here when he does." Not a request, an expectation. And if I'm not? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Mrs. Winters paused in buttering a piece of toast, her eyes meeting mine for the first time. "That would be unwise, Miss Mitchell." The quiet warning in her voice sent a chill through me. How much did she know about my situation? How many of Castellanos' secrets did she keep? "I see," I murmured, focusing on my coffee. "Mr. Castellano has also arranged for some items to be delivered for you," she continued, setting the toast beside my fruit plate. "They should arrive shortly." "Items? What kind of items?" "Clothing, primarily. Necessities." She gestured to my wrinkled blouse with the slightest hint of disapproval. "He thought you might appreciate having options." I bristled at the implication, but said nothing. My pride wasn't worth antagonizing one of the few people who might provide information about my situation. As I ate the breakfast I hadn't wanted, but suddenly found myself ravenous for, I contemplated my limited options. I could try to leave, but where would I go? Who would protect me from Jack's angry creditors? And even if I managed to evade them, how long before Castellano found me again? He had resources, connections, power. I had $67 in my wallet, and maxed out credit cards. The sound of the elevator arriving interrupted my thoughts. Mrs. Winters moved to receive whatever delivery was expected, leaving me alone with my rapidly cooling toast and darker thoughts. I took the opportunity to explore, moving quickly through the living area toward the wall of windows that had captivated me the night before. In daylight, the view was even more spectacular. The city sprawled below, the ocean glittering in the distance. Tiny figures moving like ants along the streets far below. A sleek laptop sat closed on a glass desk positioned to enjoy the view. I glanced over my shoulder, confirming Mrs. Winters was still occupied, then moved toward it. If I could just send an email, contact someone. I wouldn't. The voice froze me in place, my hand inches from the laptop lid. Alexander Castellano stood in the entrance to what appeared to be a home office, watching me with those penetrating dark eyes. He wore a light gray suit today, no tie again, his white shirt open at the collar. He looked rested, immaculate, completely in control. "The laptop requires biometric authentication," he continued conversationally, moving toward me with the fluid grace of a predator. "And even if you manage to access it, who exactly would you contact, Emma? The police? Your friends? Jack?" Heat flooded my face. "I wasn't... Please." He waved a dismissive hand. "Don't insult both our intelligence with denials." He was right. Of course I'd been about to try to contact someone, anyone who might help me escape this gilded cage. The fact that I couldn't immediately think of who that person might be only underscored the precariousness of my position. "Mrs. Winters said you'd be back at noon," I said instead, retreating from the desk. "My meetings concluded earlier than expected." He studied me, taking in my wrinkled clothes and damp hair. "I see the items I ordered haven't arrived yet." "I don't need new clothes," I said stiffly. His lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's not about need, Emma. It's about appropriate attire for the role you'll be playing." "Role? What role?" "All in good time." He gestured toward the seating area. "Come, we have matters to discuss." It wasn't a request. I followed him to the arrangement of sleek sofas, perching on the edge of one while he sat opposite me, completely at ease. "Your phone," he said, extending his hand. "Hand it over." I clutched my purse tighter. "Why?" "Because Jack will contact you soon. Probably today." My heart skipped. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I've made sure he knows exactly where you are." His smile was cold. "And with whom?" The implication hit me like a physical blow. You're using me as bait. I prefer to think of it as creating an opportunity. He leaned forward, hand still extended. The phone, Emma. Reluctantly, I retrieved my phone from my purse and placed it in his palm, our fingers brushing briefly. He turned it over, examining the cracked screen and worn case with faint distaste, before passing it to a man I hadn't noticed standing silently in the corner of the room. Another security detail, no doubt. My associate will ensure it's properly configured for our purposes, Castellano explained. Meaning you'll be able to monitor every call and message, I translated flatly. He inclined his head, acknowledging without apology. When Jack contacts you, and he will, you'll express relief at hearing from him. You'll tell him you've been worried sick. You'll ask to see him. And then what? I lead him into a trap? Precisely. He studied me with those dark, unreadable eyes. The question is, will you be convincing enough? Jack knows you, after all. He'll sense if something is wrong. I looked away, unable to hold his gaze. Why would I help you? Jack may have betrayed me, stolen from me, but I don't want his blood on my hands. Who said anything about blood? Castellano's voice was silky smooth. I simply want what he took from me. And once you have it, what happens to him then? What happens to me? He leaned back, regarding me thoughtfully. That depends entirely on how cooperative you both prove to be. The threat hung in the air between us, unspoken but unmistakable. What did he take from you? I asked, desperate to understand what had placed me in this impossible position. You said it wasn't just money. Something dangerous flashed in Castellano's eyes. Information. The kind that could prove inconvenient in the wrong hands. Blackmail material, I guessed. Let's call it leverage. He rose suddenly, moving to the bar cart where crystal decanters caught the sunlight. Drink? It's barely 11 in the morning. Time is a social construct, Emma. He poured amber liquid into a tumbler for himself. Especially in our current situation. Our situation. As if we were partners in this twisted scenario rather than captor and captive. Was it worth it? I asked, a new thought occurring to me. Whatever Jack took, was it worth ruining my life over? Castellano paused, glass halfway to his lips. Your life was already ruined the moment you got involved with Jack Romano. I'm merely offering you a chance to salvage something from the wreckage. By betraying him. By surviving him. He took a slow sip of his drink, watching me over the rim of his glass. Make no mistake, Emma. If the Moretti family finds Jack before I do, they won't stop with him. They'll come for you next. Guilt by association is a powerful concept in our world. A cold shiver ran through me. You keep saying our world like it's separate from everyone else's. Like you live by different rules. We do. The simplicity of his statement was chilling. The sooner you accept that, the better your chances of navigation this situation successfully. The elevator chimed, interrupting whatever I might have said in response. Mrs. Winters appeared moments later, followed by two young women carrying multiple garment bags and shopping bags bearing the logos of high-end designers. Your delivery, sir, Mrs. Winters announced. Castellano nodded his approval. Have everything arranged in the guest room. As the women disappeared down the hallway with their expensive burdens, I turned back to Castellano, anger suddenly overriding fear. You can't buy me, I said, low and fierce. Whatever game you're playing, I won't be a pawn in it. He set down his glass and closed the distance between us with two long strides. Before I could retreat, his hand was under my chin, tilting my face up to his with surprising gentleness. You've been a pawn for the past 2 years, Emma, he said softly, his thumb brushing along my jawline. The difference is, I'm offering you a chance to become a player instead. His touch burned against my skin, a mixture of threat and something else. Something I refused to acknowledge, even to myself. I don't want to play at all, I whispered. Too late. His eyes searched mine, looking for something I couldn't identify. You were in the game the moment Jack decided to cross me. The intensity of his gaze was too much. I pulled away, wrapping my arms around myself as if they could offer protection. When he calls, Castellano continued, his voice hardening, you'll do exactly as I instruct. You'll meet him at the location of his choosing. My men will be watching, but they won't intervene unless necessary. Your only job is to get Jack to tell you where he's hidden what he took, and if I refuse?" His smile was cold. "Then I withdraw my protection, as discussed last night. The Moretti family is particularly creative when it comes to extracting information. Or revenge. Their methods would make mine seem positively gentle by comparison." The casual way he delivered this threat made it all the more terrifying. This wasn't bluster or exaggeration. It was simple fact. "I need air," I said suddenly, feeling the walls closing in around me. "I can't breathe in here." Something like concern flickered across his face. "The terrace," he said after a moment, gesturing toward glass doors I hadn't noticed before. "But don't get any ideas. We're 60 floors up." The implication that I might be desperate enough to jump sent a chill through me. Was I that transparent? Or was he simply accustomed to dealing with people pushed to their limits? I moved toward the terrace doors, needing escape, even if only temporary. As I pushed them open, the rush of cool air against my face was like a blessing, clearing my head momentarily of fear and confusion. The terrace was massive, wrapping around the corner of the building with panoramic views in multiple directions. Sleek outdoor furniture, potted trees, and even a small infinity pool created an oasis high above the city. In another life, I might have found it breathtaking. Now, it only emphasized how far I had to fall. I moved to the glass railing, gripping it tight as I gazed out at the city sprawled beneath us. Somewhere out there, Jack was hiding. Somewhere out there were people who wanted us both dead, and here I was, caught between the devil I knew and the one I was just beginning to understand. I don't know how long I stood at the railing, letting the wind whip my hair around my face before I sensed his presence behind me. Alexander Castellano moved silently for such a powerful man. "Your phone," he said, extending it toward me. "My security team has finished their modifications." I took it without comment, noticing a new app with an innocuous cloud icon that hadn't been there before. Tracking software, no doubt. "It will notify me of any incoming calls or messages," he confirmed, reading my thoughts. "Don't bother trying to remove it or reset the phone. It would be counterproductive." I slipped the phone into my pocket. "Is there anything in my life you don't intend to control?" His eyes glinted dangerously in the sunlight. "Control is safety, Emma. The sooner you understand that, the easier this will be for both of us." "Easy for you, maybe." I turned back to the view, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze. "You're not the one being forced to betray someone you once loved. Once." He picked up on the word immediately. "So you admit your feelings for Jack have changed." I gripped the railing tighter. He emptied our joint account and left me with his debts. "What do you think?" "I think," he said, moving closer until I could feel the heat from his body, "that emotions rarely submit to logic, especially love." There was something in his voice, a hint of bitterness, perhaps, or old pain, that made me glance up at him. For a brief moment, his mask slipped, revealing something raw and human beneath the controlled exterior. "You sound like you speak from experience," I ventured. The mask slammed back into place. "We're not discussing me." Before I could respond, the phone in my pocket vibrated. My heart lurched as I pulled it out, Jack's name flashing on the screen. Castellano's eyes narrowed as he saw it too. "Answer," he commanded softly. "Put it on speaker." With trembling fingers, I accepted the call. "Jack?" "Emma, thank God." His voice, once so beloved, now painfully familiar, flooded through the speaker. "Are you okay? Where are you?" I caught Castellano's warning glance. "I'm safe," I managed, the half-truth bitter on my tongue. "Where have you been? You disappeared and left me with nothing." "I know, baby, I know. I'm so sorry." The contrition in Jack's voice sounded genuine, but I'd learned the hard way how good an actor he could be. I had to leave quickly. There were complications. Complications? I let genuine anger seep into my voice. "Is that what you call stealing our savings and vanishing for days?" "It wasn't like that," he insisted. "I was protecting you. There are dangerous people after me, Em. I couldn't risk them finding you too." The irony of his words wasn't lost on me as I stood beside the most dangerous man I'd ever met. Castellano's expression remained impassive, but I could sense the tension radiating from him. "Well, they found me anyway," I said truthfully. "I've been hiding in a motel for days, terrified, broke, alone. Christ, Em, I'm so sorry." Jack's voice cracked convincingly. "Where are you now? Are you still at the motel?" Castellano nodded slightly, encouraging me to continue the deception. "No," I said. I couldn't afford it anymore. I'm staying with a friend." "Which friend?" Jack's tone sharpened with suspicion. "No one you know," I replied quickly. "Someone from work." A pause. I could almost see Jack calculating, assessing, planning, traits I'd once found charming and now recognized as manipulative. "Listen, Emma, I need to see you," he said finally. "I can explain everything. I have a plan to fix this, all of it. But I need your help." Castellano leaned closer, his breath warm against my ear as he whispered, "Tell him you want to help, that you've missed him." The proximity sent involuntary shivers down my spine. I stepped away slightly, but his hand came to rest at the small of my back, an unmistakable reminder of who was in control. I want to help," I stammered into the phone. "Despite everything, I've missed you, Jack." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. Had I missed him? The man I thought I knew had never existed. Just another con, another lie. "I've missed you too, baby. So much." Relief flooded his voice. "Can you meet me tonight? Somewhere quiet where we can talk." Castellano's fingers pressed slightly against my back, a silent prompt. "Where?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Remember that little park near the river? The one where we had that picnic last summer? Meet me there at midnight, by the old gazebo." I closed my eyes, remembering one of the few genuine happy memories I had with Jack, a surprise picnic under the stars, champagne and strawberries, whispered promises that had meant everything to me then. "Emma, are you there?" Jack's voice pulled me back to the present. "Yes," I managed. "The gazebo, midnight." "Come alone," he added, urgency edging his tone. "I mean it, Em. If I see anyone else, I'm gone. I can't risk it." Castellano's jaw tightened, but he nodded once, signaling me to agree. "I'll be alone," I promised, the lie burning my throat. "Just us, like before." "That's my girl." The relief in Jack's voice made my heart twist painfully. "I'll explain everything tonight, I promise. We'll fix this together." "Together," I echoed hollowly. "I love you, Emma. Never forget that." Before I could respond, the call disconnected. I stood frozen, the phone still clutched in my hand, torn between grief for what I'd lost and fear for what was to come. "Well done," Castellano said softly, his hand still resting possessively at the small of my back. "You were very convincing." I pulled away from his touch, anger and shame burning through me. "Don't. Just don't." His expression hardened. "This sentimentality serves no purpose, Emma. Jack Romano is not the man you thought you knew. He never was. And you are?" I challenged, reckless in my emotional turmoil. "The noble Mafia boss, just trying to recover what's rightfully his? Don't pretend you're any better than he is." In an instant, Castellano's hand shot out, gripping my wrist with enough pressure to bruise. His eyes burned with a cold fury that made my breath catch. "The difference," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "is that I never pretend to be anything other than what I am. I don't seduce innocent women with promises of love and forever. I don't betray those who trust me. And I don't abandon people who depend on me." The raw intensity of his words stunned me into silence. There was truth there, a harsh, uncompromising honesty that cut through my defenses. He released my wrist as suddenly as he'd grabbed it, stepping back with impeccable self-control. "You have approximately 10 hours before your meeting with Jack. I suggest you use that time to prepare yourself for what needs to be done." Without waiting for a response, he turned and strode back into the penthouse, leaving me alone with the wind, the view, and the weight of my impending betrayal. When I finally returned inside, the penthouse was quiet. Mrs. Winters appeared briefly to inform me that lunch would be served in an hour and that Mr. Castellano had business to attend to, but would return before evening. Seeking distraction, I wandered to my assigned room, stopping short in the doorway. The bed was now covered with shopping bags and garment bags, tissue paper spilling from some like exotic blooms. I approached warily, lifting the nearest bag to reveal a cashmere sweater in a soft shade of blue, the price tag still attached. The figure made me gasp, more than a week's salary at my former job. Curiosity overcoming indignation, I examined the other items. Jeans that probably cost more than my rent. Silk blouses, delicate lingerie, a leather jacket butter soft to the touch. Everything in my size, everything tasteful and expensive. It was a wardrobe built for a role, the role Castellano expected me to play tonight. Jack's loving, forgiving girlfriend, eager to reunite despite his betrayal. The thought made bile rise in my throat. I sank onto the edge of the bed, surrounded by the trappings of a life that wasn't mine, wondering how I'd come to this point. 3 years ago, I'd left Charleston with dreams of adventure and independence. Now I was a pawn between powerful men, with nothing to my name but debt and fear. A soft knock interrupted my spiral of self-pity. Mrs. Winters stood in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral as she surveyed the untouched bounty spread across the bed. Mr. Castellano suggested you might want to try on the black dress for tonight's meeting, she said, indicating a garment bag hanging on the closet door. He thought it would suit the occasion. Of course, he had selected specific clothing for me to wear. Why was I even surprised? Thank you, I said stiffly. I'll consider it. Mrs. Winters hesitated, something like sympathy flickering in her eyes. Miss Mitchell, may I speak frankly? The unexpected question caught me off guard. I nodded cautiously. She glanced over her shoulder before continuing in a lower voice. I've worked for Mr. Castellano for 7 years. In that time, I've seen many people come and go from this penthouse. Business associates. Enemies. Occasionally, women. I flinched at the implication, but she continued. Never, in all that time, have I seen him personally select clothing for anyone. Never has he instructed me to make someone comfortable rather than merely accommodated. Or, what are you saying? I asked, confused by this glimpse behind the curtain. I'm saying that, whatever is happening between you and Mr. Castellano, it's unusual. She straightened, reverting to her professional demeanor. Lunch will be served in the dining room at 1. Mr. Castellano asked that you join him at 7 for dinner before your evening engagement. With that cryptic observation, she departed, leaving me more confused than ever. What game was Castellano playing? And why did it matter if I was a unique piece on his chessboard when the end result would be the same? Jack betrayed? And me? What would happen to me after tonight? Once I'd served my purpose, would Castellano simply discard me? Or was there something else at play? Something in the way he looked at me, touched me, that suggested different intentions. The afternoon passed in a haze of anxiety and restless pacing. I ate lunch alone, picking at exquisitely prepared food I barely tasted. I showered in the luxurious bathroom, letting hot water pound away some of the tension coiled in my shoulders. I even tried on some of the new clothes, hating myself for admiring how perfectly they fit, how the soft fabrics felt against my skin. By 6, I was a bundle of raw nerves. The prospect of seeing Jack again, of looking into the eyes of the man I'd once believed would be my husband and deliberately leading him into a trap, was nearly unbearable. When 7 o'clock approached, I finally unzipped the garment bag containing the black dress Mrs. Winters had mentioned. It was a simple sheath dress, elegantly cut, with a neckline that hinted at rather than flaunted, and a hem that would hit just above my knees. Tasteful. Expensive. Perfect for a clandestine midnight meeting. I slipped it on, the silk lining cool against my skin. It fit as if it had been made for me, emphasizing curves while remaining understated. Subtle. Elegant. Dangerous in its simplicity. A knock at my door startled me. I opened it to find not Mrs. Winters, but one of Castellano's security men, his expression impassive. Mr. Castellano requests your company for dinner, Miss Mitchell. I followed him through the penthouse to a formal dining room I hadn't seen before. A table that could have seated 12 was set for 2, candles casting a warm glow over fine china and crystal. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed the city beginning to twinkle with evening lights, the sunset painting the sky in dramatic strokes of orange and purple. Alexander Castellano stood by the window, a glass of wine in hand, his back to me as he surveyed his domain. He'd changed into a charcoal suit that fit his broad shoulders to perfection, his dark hair slicked back from his forehead. "The dress suits you," he said without turning, somehow aware of my presence. I thought it might. "Did you personally select everything?" I asked, recalling Mrs. Winters's strange revelation. Now he turned, his dark eyes traveling over me in a slow appraisal that made heat rise to my cheeks. "I have an eye for quality," he said simply. "And for what complements natural beauty?" The unexpected compliment threw me off balance. I'm not sure how to respond to that. "You don't need to respond. It's merely an observation." He gestured to the table. "Please sit. We have matters to discuss before tonight." I took the indicated chair, noting the careful placement, not at the opposite end of the long table, but adjacent to the head where he seated himself, close enough for intimate conversation, yet still maintaining the hierarchy he clearly valued. A server I hadn't seen before appeared silently, pouring wine and serving the first course, a delicate soup that smelled of truffles and herbs. "You seem calmer," Castellano observed as the server withdrew. "Have you made peace with what must happen tonight?" I set down my spoon, appetite vanishing. "No. I've simply accepted that I have no choice. There are always choices, Emma. Some are merely less appealing than others. That's not choice. It's coercion." His lips curved in a humorless smile. "Semantics. The world operates on coercion of various kinds. Some financial, some emotional, some physical. At least I'm honest about my methods." "Is honesty supposed to be a virtue when you're threatening someone?" He took a sip of wine, regarding me over the rim of his glass. "In my experience, clarity is preferable to deception. Jack deceived you for years, made you believe in a future that never existed, a man who never was. I've been transparent about my expectations from the beginning. I couldn't argue with his logic, infuriating as it was. Jack's betrayal had been all the more devastating for its unexpectedness, the years of lies unraveling in a single day. Tonight," Castellano continued, setting down his glass, "you will meet Jack as arranged. My men will be positioned discreetly throughout the park, but they won't interfere unless necessary. Your task is simple. Get him to tell you where he's hidden what he took from me. And how am I supposed to do that? Use your shared history. Remind him of his promise to explain everything. Appeal to the connection he believes still exists between you." His eyes hardened. "Whatever it takes, Emma." The implication hung in the air between us. I pushed my soup away, stomach churning. "I won't sleep with him for your information," I said flatly. Something dangerous flashed in Castellano's eyes. Not anger, but something darker, more possessive. "That won't be necessary," he said, his voice deceptively soft. "But you might need to let him believe it's a possibility. And after I get this information, what then?" "My men will take Jack into custody. You will return here with my driver." He resumed eating as if discussing nothing more consequential than the weather. "Your part will be finished. And then what happens to me?" He paused, dark eyes meeting mine. "That depends on you, Emma." "Meaning?" "Meaning there could be a place for someone like you in my organization. Someone intelligent, adaptable, with an understanding of certain realities." I stared at him, incredulous. "You're offering me a job? As what? Your personal betrayer? Professional bait?" His expression hardened. "I'm offering you protection, security you won't find anywhere else, especially once word gets out about your role in Jack's capture." The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. After tonight, I would be marked, associated with Alexander Castellano in the eyes of people like the Morettis. There would be no going back to normal life, no escape from the world I was being dragged into. "You planned this all along," I whispered, the full scope of his manipulation becoming clear. "From the moment you saw my note in the restaurant, you never intended to let me go." Something like admiration flickered in his eyes. "You're beginning to understand how this works." Good. The park was eerily silent at midnight, moonlight casting long shadows through the trees. I walked the familiar path toward the gazebo, each step feeling like a betrayal. The dress Castellano had chosen whispered against my skin, the leather jacket he'd insisted I wear against the night chill hanging heavy on my shoulders. I'll be watching, he'd told me as his driver dropped me at the park entrance, his voice low in my ear, breath warm against my skin. Remember what's at stake. I didn't need the reminder. The weight of what I was about to do pressed down on me with every step. The gazebo appeared through the trees, a white Victorian structure glowing ghostly in the moonlight. A figure waited inside, pacing, anxious, familiar even in silhouette. Jack. My heart constricted painfully at the sight of him. He looked thinner than I remembered, his usually perfectly styled hair disheveled, his jaw dark with stubble. When he saw me, naked relief washed over his face. "Emma," he breathed, crossing the distance between us in 3 long strides, his arms wrapped around me, pulling me tight against his chest. "God, I've missed you." For a moment, just a moment, I let myself remember how it felt to love him, to believe in the future he'd promised. Then I remembered the empty bank account, the threatening phone calls from strangers, the nights spent trembling in fear in a cheap motel room. I pulled away, creating distance between us. "You left me with nothing, Jack. You disappeared." "I know." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture achingly familiar. "I had no choice, Em. These people, they would have killed us both. What did you do?" I asked, genuine anger making my voice shake. "What was so valuable that you risked both our lives?" Jack glanced nervously around the deserted park. "Not here. I have a car waiting. We need to leave the city tonight, together." "I'm not going anywhere until you explain," I insisted, taking another step back. "You owe me that much." His expression tightened, calculation replacing contrition. I recognized that look now, the subtle shift when he was adjusting his approach, recalibrating his manipulation. "It's complicated," he said, reaching for my hand. I let him take it, though his touch no longer sent the familiar thrill through me. I was working for Alexander Castellano, laundering money through some accounts, but I found something, Emma, something I wasn't supposed to see. My pulse quickened. Now we were getting somewhere. "What did you find?" "Evidence." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Financial records linking Castellano to the murder of Antonio Moretti's son last year, the one everyone thought was a rival gang hit." I kept my expression neutral, though inside my mind was racing. This was what Castellano wanted, what Jack had taken. Evidence of murder. "So you, stole these records?" I asked, trying to sound horrified rather than calculating. Jack's eyes gleamed with something like pride. "I copied everything to an encrypted drive. Insurance, you know. But then Castellano's security team started asking questions, looking at my access logs. I knew it was only a matter of time before they figured it out. So you ran." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "And left me behind to face them." He had the grace to look ashamed. "I had to move fast. I thought they wouldn't connect you to it, that you'd be safer if I just disappeared." "Well, you thought wrong." I snapped, the anger real now. "They found me, Jack. The Morettis. They thought I knew where you were, what you'd taken." Fear flashed across his face. "Christ, Emma, I'm so sorry. Did they hurt you?" I looked away, letting him interpret my silence however he would. Let him think I'd suffered for his actions. In a way, I had. "We need to leave," he repeated, more urgently now. "I have new identities arranged, enough money to start over somewhere they'll never find us." "The evidence," I pressed, forcing myself to touch his cheek, to look into his eyes with what I hoped passed for love rather than loathing. "Where is it now?" His expression softened at my touch, still so easy to manipulate despite being a manipulator himself. "Somewhere safe. A storage locker at Central Station, hidden inside an old family photo album. The key is in my pocket." My heart pounded. I had what Castellano wanted. Now I just needed to signal his men without alerting Jack. "The Morettis are still looking for me," I said, taking his hand. "For us, how do I know we'll be safe? Once we're out of the country, I'll anonymously send copies of the evidence to the FBI, to every news outlet in the city," Jack explained, his confidence returning. "Castellano will be too busy fighting murder charges to chase us." I'd heard enough. It was time to end this charade. I stepped back, removing the leather jacket as if warm despite the cool night air, the signal Castellano and I had arranged. Jack frowned. "What are you doing?" It's freezing. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It's quite warm for October. Confusion crossed his face, followed quickly by dawning comprehension as the shadows around the gazebo shifted, taking human form. Emma? Betrayal and disbelief warred in his eyes. What have you done? What you forced me to do, I answered truthfully. Jack lunged forward, but he never reached me. Two of Castellano's men materialized from the darkness, restraining him with brutal efficiency. You bitch, he spat, struggling against their grip. You set me up. After everything we've been through, after everything you put me through, I corrected coldly. A black SUV pulled up on the nearby service road, headlights cutting through the darkness. Another figure emerged, tall, imposing, unmistakable even in silhouette. Alexander Castellano approached with unhurried confidence, stopping beside me. His hand came to rest at the small of my back, a gesture both possessive and oddly protective. Jack, he greeted, his voice pleasant, as if encountering an old friend. It's been what? 9 days since you disappeared with my property? Jack's struggles ceased, his face draining of color as he fully grasped his situation. Castellano. How did you... His eyes darted to me, comprehension and fury mingling in his expression. You've been with him all along. Not all along, Castellano corrected mildly. Only since she reached out for help. His thumb stroked small circles against my back, a gesture Jack didn't miss, his eyes narrowing. So that's it? Jack sneered, looking between us. You traded up for a bigger fish? I never took you for a gold digger, Em. The accusation stung despite everything. You left me with nothing, Jack, with your debts, with people threatening my life because of what you stole. What did you expect me to do? Central Station, Castellano said, ignoring our exchange. Storage locker, family photo album. He glanced at one of his men, who nodded and moved away, already making a call. Rather sentimental for a man with no actual family, wouldn't you say? Jack's face contorted with hatred. You won't get away with this. The Morettis are no longer a concern, Castellano cut in smoothly. Their organization has been absorbed into mine. A family reunification, if you will. The implication hung in the night air. The territory dispute I'd heard mentioned wasn't just business. It was personal. Take him to the warehouse, Castellano instructed his men. I'll join you shortly. As they dragged Jack toward a second vehicle that had silently appeared, he called out one last time, his voice breaking with genuine emotion for perhaps the first time since I'd known him. Emma, please, don't let him do this. I turned away, unable to watch, unsure if the churning in my stomach was guilt or relief, or some toxic combination of both. Castellano's hand moved from my back to my shoulder, turning me gently to face him. You did well, he said quietly. Better than I expected. What happens to him now? I asked, not sure I wanted the answer. That depends on what we find at the storage locker, he replied, studying my face in the moonlight, and on whether he can be convinced to be more cooperative than he has been thus far. The euphemism wasn't lost on me. You're going to hurt him. It wasn't a question, but he answered anyway. Only as much as necessary to ensure he hasn't made copies of what he stole. Jack made his choice, Emma, as did you. A choice that wasn't really a choice at all. We both knew that. Come, he said, guiding me toward the waiting SUV. My driver will take you back to the penthouse. Mrs. Winters will attend to whatever you need. And you? I asked, pausing at the car door he held open. His expression hardened. I have business to conclude with your former fiancé. Something in his tone made me shiver. For all his cultured manners and expensive suits, Alexander Castellano was still a man who operated outside the law, who held life and death in his hands with casual authority. Please, I said, surprising myself by touching his arm. Don't kill him. Castellano went still, looking down at my hand on the fine wool of his suit jacket, then up to my eyes. Why do you care what happens to him after what he did to you? I don't want more blood on my hands, I admitted. I've betrayed him. That's enough. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the shadows. Finally, he nodded once. Very well. If the drive contains only what he claims, he'll live. Exile, not execution. It was more mercy than I'd expected, and probably more than Jack deserved, but relief washed through me nonetheless. "Thank you," I whispered. Something softened in his eyes. "Get some rest, Emma. We'll talk tomorrow about your future." The future. A concept that had seemed hopeless just days ago, now looming before me with terrifying uncertainty. As the SUV pulled away, I caught a final glimpse of Castellano standing in the moonlight, watching me leave, his powerful silhouette etched against the night sky, like something from a dark fairy tale. The beast who had saved me from one monster only to claim me for himself. I woke the next morning to sunlight and the distant sound of the penthouse elevator arriving. I'd slept fitfully, dreams filled with Jack's face contorted in betrayal, with shadowy warehouses and evidence of crimes I wanted no part of. Slipping on a robe, silk, of course, I ventured into the living area, tensing when I saw Castellano standing by the windows, his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. "It's confirmed," he was saying, his voice clipped and businesslike. "The drive contains exactly what we thought. Have our people at the department make it disappear." He paused, listening. "No, I gave my word. Passage to Buenos Aires, new identity, the usual arrangement." Jack would live, then. The knowledge lifted a weight I hadn't fully acknowledged until that moment. Castellano ended the call, turning as if sensing my presence. He looked immaculate, as always, though the faint shadows under his eyes suggested a sleepless night. "Good morning," he said, slipping the phone into his pocket. "I trust you slept well?" "As well as could be expected." I hesitated, then asked the question burning in my mind. "Is it over?" "Yes." He moved to the kitchen island, where coffee waited in an elegant carafe. "Jack is already on his way out of the country. The evidence has been contained. The Moretti situation was resolved last week, before he'd even found me in that restaurant. The realization that I'd been part of a much larger plan all along made me dizzy. And me?" I asked quietly. "What happens to me now?" Castellano poured 2 cups of coffee, adding cream to one before offering it to me. He'd noticed how I took my coffee, I realized. A small detail, but somehow significant. "That," he said, "is entirely up to you." I accepted the coffee with a skeptical look. "Is it really?" "Within parameters." His lips curved slightly. "I meant what I said last night. There could be a place for you in my organization." "Doing what? I'm not a criminal." "Neither am I, technically speaking." He sipped his coffee. "My businesses are legitimate. Real estate, import-export, private security, banking. With illegitimate edges," I countered. He inclined his head, conceding the point. "The world isn't as black and white as you were raised to believe, Emma. There are many shades of gray between law and crime, between right and wrong. And where do you fall in that spectrum?" His dark eyes held mine. "I protect what's mine. I honor my commitments. I deal severely with enemies and generously with allies. Beyond that, morality becomes subjective." It wasn't really an answer, but it told me more about him than perhaps he intended. Alexander Castellano operated by a code, not society's, but his own. "What would I be to you?" I asked, the question emerging before I could reconsider it. "If I stayed." Something flickered in his eyes, heat, possession, perhaps even the beginnings of genuine affection. At first, an asset, someone who's proven her value and loyalty. And later, he set down his cup, closing the distance between us with deliberate steps. That would depend on many factors: chemistry, compatibility. His voice dropped lower. Mutual desire. My breath caught as he reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear, his fingers lingering against my cheek. The touch sent electricity coursing through me, fear and something else I wasn't ready to acknowledge. "And if I wanted to leave?" I asked, forcing myself to maintain eye contact despite the intensity of his gaze. "To start over somewhere else?" His expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "I would provide sufficient resources for you to establish a new life, new identity, comfortable financial cushion. But you would need to disappear completely. No contact with anyone from your past. No return to this city, ever." The finality in his tone made it clear. If I left, There would be no coming back, no second chances. Why? I asked. Why offer me these choices at all? Why not just dispose of me once I'd served my purpose with Jack? His jaw clenched, genuine anger flashing in his eyes. Is that who you think I am? Someone who uses people and discards them? I don't know who you are, I admitted. I only know what you've shown me: power, control, and occasional mercy when it suits you. He studied me for a long moment. The night you wrote that plea for help, I had already been watching you for weeks, he admitted. Ever since Jack began working for me, I was curious about the woman who had captured his loyalty. I had my people investigate you, your background, your character, your potential. I stiffened. My potential for what? For this moment. This choice. He gestured around us. I knew Jack would betray me eventually. Men like him always do. I wanted to know if you were complicit or simply collateral damage. And what did you conclude? That you were intelligent, adaptable, and far too good for a man like Jack Romano. A hint of a smile touched his lips. Your actions since then have only confirmed my assessment. I absorbed this revelation slowly, that I had been observed, evaluated, deemed worthy of salvaging from the wreckage of Jack's betrayal. It should have terrified me. Instead, I felt an odd sense of validation. I need time, I said finally. To think, to decide. He nodded, stepping back, respecting my space in a way Jack never had. Take all the time you need. The penthouse is yours to use while you consider your options. And if I choose to leave, then arrangements will be made. Something like regret flashed in his eyes. Though I hope you'll consider staying. The raw honesty in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't just about business for him. Not anymore. Why? I asked again, needing to hear him say it. He considered me for a long moment, weighing his words carefully. Because in a world full of liars and traitors, I've found someone with the courage to make difficult choices and the integrity to feel the weight of them afterward. His gaze intensified. Because I think we could be extraordinary together. The sincerity in his voice, the glimpse of vulnerability beneath his controlled exterior, shook something loose inside me. A recognition that perhaps Alexander Castellano was not just the devil I'd first believed him to be, but a man shaped by a harsh world into something both dangerous and compelling. I set down my coffee cup, decision crystallizing with surprising clarity. I'll stay, for now, to see what this arrangement might become. Relief and satisfaction mingled in his expression. A wise choice. With conditions, I added quickly. His eyebrow arched. You're hardly in a position to negotiate, Emma. Aren't I? I challenged, finding unexpected strength. You said yourself I'm valuable. That means I have leverage, however small. A slow smile spread across his face. Genuine amusement, and something that looked remarkably like respect. Name your terms. I won't participate in anything illegal. I won't be used as bait again. And I need some measure of independence. My own bank account, my own space, eventually my own place to live. He considered this for a moment, then nodded. Acceptable. Though I'll add security provisions to the living arrangements. Your connection to me makes you a potential target. One more thing, I said, heart pounding with my own boldness. Whatever develops between us, it has to be real. Not another transaction, not another power play. I've had enough manipulation to last a lifetime. His expression softened, almost imperceptibly. On that, we are aligned. He held out his hand. Do we have an agreement? I looked at his extended hand, the hand of a man who commanded an empire in shadows, who held power of life and death, who had orchestrated my salvation and Jack's downfall with equal precision. But also the hand of a man who had kept his word, who had shown mercy when asked, who looked at me with something more complex than mere desire or calculation. I placed my hand in his, feeling the warm strength of his grip, the potential of what we might become together. We have an agreement, I said. His fingers tightened around mine, sealing a pact that felt less like capitulation and more like the first step on a new path. Dangerous, uncertain, but mine by choice, not coercion. 6 weeks ago, I had written "Save Me" on a restaurant bill, a desperate plea from a woman with nothing left to lose. I couldn't have imagined then where that plea would lead, to betrayal and revelation, to hard choices and unexpected possibilities. To Alexander Castellano, who had indeed saved me, though not in any way I could have anticipated. As he drew me closer, his dark eyes holding promises of protection and passion in equal measure, I realized that sometimes salvation comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes the devil who notices your plea is exactly the angel you need, and sometimes, when you have the courage to face the darkness, you find unexpected light within it and within yourself. I had written "Save Me" on a bill. Now I was saving myself,